turnover out at wide receiver, and maybe more than we would have expected when you found out that Kayshon Boutte was going to come back. Then Jack Bech leaves. Kayshon decides he's going to move on to the NFL draft, and so you are going to have some new faces out at wide receiver. One is obviously Malik Nabers, who had a 1,000-yard season in year 2 in Baton Rouge last year and really emerged as the go-to guy in the offense. And, obviously Nabers had the bump in with the law there at Mardi Gras, was arrested and booked, didn't have to post bond, charges not going to be pressed. Kind of moving forward a little bit, and Brian Kelly did allude to the media yesterday that there will be no disciplinary action from Malik Nabers on the field in terms of game time. Internal discipline may involve some stairs at rather early hours in the morning, may involve bear crawls or sprints or whatever the discipline may be, but it will not be against Florida State in the first quarter. So Malik Nabers comes back as your number 1 wide receiver. Brian Thomas returns, and I really liked Brian Thomas's year last year. Of course, he makes a really athletic catch in the end zone against Florida, which was a great play. Showed the insane athletic ability he has with that frame. And I kept continuing to say, hey, you gotta give him a chance to go make a play. You got to take your shots. And that's what we were talking about with Jaden Daniels all fall last year. It's like, man, give these guys a chance to go up there and get on top of some defensive backs. And that's a skill set I want to see unlocked more with Brian Thomas this year. I think he's going to have an excellent year. Kyron Lacey is back. I thought he had a nice year for LSU last year. The drops late in the season were a little bit concerning. Had those against A&M, had a couple. And so we'll see what the future holds for him. But he's got a good frame and fairly athletic. Not a guy you necessarily think of as your number 1 wide receiver, but does have some depth to the room. Chris Hilton is a guy that I'd really like to see in the spring, and I will be very candid. I don't know what his status is right now for the spring. He could be 100% ready to go. He could not be and still be dealing with the injury stuff that held him out last season. We'll see when we get out there, I guess. I don't know. But that's a guy that's got unbelievable speed. If you go back to the last play of the Texas Bowl a couple years ago, John Trey hit him for a long touchdown. You can see the speed that Chris Hilton has. Very obvious, and it's a great skill set that I'd like to see used. There's some Trey Palmer in there, and you saw just the impact Trey Palmer had on Nebraska last year because of speed. Speed is such a just incredibly valuable tool, and Chris Hilton has a lot of it. So I'd love to see some of that from him moving forward. Aaron Anderson will be out during the spring. He comes in from Tuscaloosa, and it's a guy that has tons of speed, change of direction, all that jazz, but he's got some injury concerns, which quite frankly concerned me a little bit because of what you dealt with in Tuscaloosa and now coming back and dealing with it again in the spring. But they're trying to do everything they can to make sure that he's ready to go in the summer and certainly in the fall. So he's going to sit out the spring, so won't see any Aaron Anderson out there this week. Landon Ibieta coming in for his second year here. Slot guy that hasn't gotten a ton of run, played a little bit against Purdue in that game. We'll see how much they want to use him, and maybe he factors in the return game as well as a really shifty guy who may be able to help you catch the football on punts, job 1, then maybe make a play, which LSU wasn't able to do much of either of those last year, so we'll see what Ibieta can do. The only early enrollee from a loaded wide receiver class is Jaylen Brown, and I mentioned Trey Palmer with Chris Hilton. I'm curious to see what Jaylen Brown looks like because we know from his recruiting pedigree that he is an elite speed guy. Just absolutely can take the top off of it at any time. That's his number 1 skill set. My question is just how big and filled out is he? Can you tell that he's a freshman? Or does he look like a guy who's filled out? You used to almost always be able to tell who the freshmen are when you walked out there for the first practice in August. Now, with high school strength and conditioning programs and everything that goes into all that, more often than not, they're fairly ready when they show up. But Jaylen Brown's a speed guy. Want to see him. Shelton Sampson and Kyle Parker will join the party here in the summer, and they'll round out that really loaded wide receiver class that Brian Kelly and his staff inked in the class of 2023. But Jaylen Brown will be the only one out there. So when I look at this, it looks very good. Nabers and Thomas are a fantastic 1-2, no question about it. the skill sets that Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson have when healthy are incredibly dynamic, and I want to see that as well. Not sure we will, whether that's in the spring or in the fall, because injuries are injuries, and you just never know what's going to happen on the rebound. But I'm looking forward to seeing what those guys can give you. And then with Brown, Sampson, Parker to toss in with Lacey and Ivietta, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys at wide receiver. That's plenty. And we've shown guys have broken onto the scene as freshman wide receivers. We saw Malik Nabers do it a couple of years ago. We saw Kayshawn Boutte do it in the COVID year. We saw what Jamar Chase did in his first year, which wasn't necessarily as productive as it turned out to be in the next year, but he did come on and make some impressive plays as a young player. Jack Besh had a really good freshman year as a wide receiver as well. So wide receiver is absolutely a spot that you can come in and make an impact. So what Jaylen Brown's able to get accomplished this spring may really lend him to be a guy that they can use in the fall, because Nabers and Thomas are plenty fast. And Nabers showed a gear I didn't quite frankly know he had in the Purdue game. But Brown and Hilton, and really even Anderson, that's their game, is the speed game. And I'm curious to see if that's in the jet sweep action, maybe some screen game, or just, hey, fly route, 9 route, go. You got Nabers and Thomas that are complete packages. You've got some speed guys. You've got some youth. You've got some quick, shifty guys, Ivietta, Anderson, Hilton, Brown, Parker's in that mold as well. And then you got the physical freak in Sampson that's got the length and the range and kind of the comps to Terrace Marshall that you would make with all that goes into that. So it's an exciting room for sure, and one that I think should be able to show off its ability. I think that Jaden Daniels can get the ball out to him. I think that Garrett Nussmeier can get the ball out to him. And I think that LSU should be able to utilize this great wide receiver room. How many times did you look at wide receiver rooms in the mid-2000s and go, yeah, you got that 5-star, you got this 4-star, looks really good. Man, that guy's coming back after a big year. Can we get him the ball? How you get I don't think that's necessarily the case. There are going to be some of you that are out there that are thinking about, Jaden Daniels going to wait. He holds onto the ball too long, doesn't get it out. I hear you. I'm not necessarily on your page. I don't think he'll get rid of the football. I think he'll throw it well. I thought he looked really good doing that in the Georgia game until he got hurt and had to come out of it. So excited about the wide receiver room. I think it is, again, probably the place where they need to tailor their offense toward it, because the running back room to me is a little it's certainly got numbers, but you just don't have the elite proven back that LSU had for such a long run. And now you've kind of been searching for that next guy. And TDP had one really good afternoon in Tiger Stadium, but since you walked on the field against Clemson, that's really the only game you got to show for with a sensational running game. So I think the wide receivers are going to be the focal point of the offense once again. It's a pretty good group to start as your focal point, I would say. I'm excited about what those guys can bring. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Hunt Palmer Show on YouTube. If you don't mind, throw us a like right below and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time.